Hey everybody, Eric from Green Eye Tactical. I wanted to do a video this week on front sight focus. I've seen a lot of articles and videos on the internet, the industry, people giving their thoughts and weighing in on what they think people should do. Here's my 2 cents on this. I don't teach front sight focus during any portion of any training course that I conduct. Say that again. I don't teach front sight focus. Now, one of the reasons is I teach tactical shooting, not competition or sport shooting. Now, I'm sure some of you guys out there are already rolling your eyes or going, oh man, he didn't just say that, did he? Let me unpack that a little bit because I'm not knocking competition or sport shooting. What I'm saying is that competition and sport shooting, while they are complementary to tactical shooting, you can use it to build skills, they're not necessarily the same. In some ways, competition and sport shooting is a little bit less complicated than tactical shooting. So in competition or sport shooting, generally, we're shooting uncomplicated targets, meaning IPSC or bullseye or whatever discipline you're shooting. They do complicate them slightly by maybe swapping sides from the shoot, no shoot, but it's usually unicolor. Or they'll spray paint, white or black hands, or things like that on them. That makes them a little bit more complicated, but it still doesn't require that much thought process. Generally, they know they're going to shoot the target because for a lot of disciplines, you're allowed to go and look at the stages ahead of time. So before your eyes get to that next target, you already know you're going to shoot it. You've already gamed it all out, right? So it's fairly simple. So you're able to abbreviate a lot of steps. You wouldn't want to add in steps because it would make things less efficient in a competition or sport setting. So they're trying to be hyper efficient with what they're doing and abbreviating certain steps. Now, in the real world, for tactical shooting, we're talking about shooting people. We're talking about shooting threats. Okay? So in the real world, a lot of times those aren't really cut and dry situations. It's not just a shoot or no shoot. You have to decide whether it's going to be a shoot or no shoot. It's based off of a number of factors, right? What's in the person's hands? How do they look? What's their body mannerisms, their verbiage, their intonation? There's a lot of factors that go into that. Now, think about this for a second. All those things that I just listed there, where do they take place? They take place at the target, at the threat area. Now, your eyes are not capable of precisely focusing, I said precisely focusing, at more than one distance range. Right? That's just not how our eyes are. We can have a general focus, for general situational awareness and peripheral vision, but it's not a sharp focus. And it's required to have a sharp focus to discriminate targets. Decide whether or not you're going to shoot or not shoot. And also, regular targets don't have bullseyes on them. You have to be able to very rapidly decide where the anatomical point of impact needs to be on that target based off of how the target is presented to you in order to make an incapacitating shot, right? That all happens at the target area. So one of the pitfalls of being a front sight focused shooter, yeah, great, you're on the range, you're burning down your split times, you got all the pro timers in the world out there, and it looks great. But then when you move to those complex situations, you have to untrain yourself because you're used to going where? To your front sight post immediately, right? Well, our first focus has to be on the target. Now, I'm not advocating point shooting. I don't deal in that. I think it's irresponsible. You have to be referencing your sights to some level or another, but your first focus needs to be at the target because there's a thought process that has to take there. It doesn't matter how fast you can pull the trigger. You have to decide whether or not that trigger should be pulled before you pull it. So you have to get your eyes to the target soon, as fast as possible, to be able to make that decision as early as possible, so then you can employ those skills you worked on a competition range to add to the efficiency of eliminating that threat. Does that make sense? So we have to train ourselves to be able to rapidly, on demand, shift our vision from the target area to our sights, back to the target area to new targets, because we have to have our eyes constantly moving in front of the actions that we're taking so we can make decisions earlier, right? We can problem solve that complex situation. And the only way to do that is to train vision shifts. We have to be able to focus and unfocus and move our focus from point to point to point. Now, sorry, I'm not going to take any time to explain target discrimination, lethal shot placement, or anything like that. I don't discuss that on the internet, but feel free to come to one of my courses. You know, if you want to learn more about that process and that systematic approach to discriminating and engaging and placing shots and moving on to multiple targets. We do that in courses where I know who you are and we can vet you a little bit. But just something to think about when you're going out there training. You know, don't get so focused on that front sight post, especially if you're the kind of guy who's carrying every single day. Competition in sport shooting is great and it builds skills, but don't get trapped into a competition and sport mindset if you're an everyday carrier. Okay, because gunfights, hey, it's just like war. You don't always get what you want. It may not be and usually won't be, a cut and dry situation. It could be a very complex situation. And you've got to have that eye movement working so you can work your decision-making process and you can solve that situation, right? Because that's all advanced marksmanship is. It's problem solving while applying basic marksmanship fundamentals. Nothing fancy. I hope that makes sense to you. And above all else, stay safe, train hard, and have a good one.